Well, g'day everybody, and welcome to the show. We'll just do a bit of a technical check to see if it's all working properly. And let's have a look. Yep, it says the stream is healthy, which is fantastic. And we should have some people on soon, and we'll just wait for a second and make sure that some folks turn up, or there won't be a show, basically. Okay, all good. Let's get the show on the road. So just before we do, though, just so you know what time zones we are coming from. I'm coming from this little time zone over here, where it's 9 o'clock at night for me. And you can see by the spread of time zones across the world, uh, you can check in which one you are coming from, obviously. I can't put any more time zones on there because you can only put so much in the Windows clock and alarm tool. Anyway, let's get out of that. Oh, where am I? I've lost my mouse. There I am. I'm back again. Cool. A couple of g'days before we start the show. Thomas, g'day. Kim, of course, the moderator. Or should I say the Terminator? She's there too. Geordie, g'day. Matthew, Steady Trousers, how are you? German in Tokyo. Gary, nice to meet you. Gary? No, I'm not Gary. I'm Gavin. Maxine. And picture not great. It's coming in pretty good. Hang on, let me just have a look. You may need to refresh your panel. Just let me just have a look. Just checking. It's spot on. So just if the picture's not great, just refresh your page and it'll come through fine. I just checked mine and it was okay. Okay, lovely. Thanks, honey. Okay, let's kick off the show. Let's have a look. Well, g'day, curd nerds. G'day, curd nerds. Well, 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 welcome to Ask the Cheeseman live. This is episode 65. I can't believe we're that high, of course. And yeah, we have been coming to you from a regular time slot of 8 a.m. our time. However, due to health issues, I've had to move it to the evening when I'm better and I don't have as many headaches. So seems to be working okay again. So that's fantastic. Now, just a shout out to a few people. So this week's patron is Adam Flores. Thank you, Adam, for signing up to our Patreon campaign to keep the show going. Now, some of the videos that you'll see, well, you've already seen one this week, and that's the Not So Provolone, which I aged for a year in the cheese cave. And it turned out okay. It wasn't quite provolone, but I didn't really know what to do with it after I had moulded it. I didn't have ideal ripening conditions, so basically I vac packed it, and I vac packed it so hard that so much of the whey came out. It was just weird. Anyway, on Friday, the taste test for Farmhouse Cheddar Blue will be available, and it is, mark my words, one of the best taste test videos or cheeses, I would say, I have ever made. So don't forget that. Also, next Monday coming out, there is a video of my latest podcast episode. So I decided, well, hey, I'm recording something. I might as well turn the cameras on and be done with it. So I did a 2-camera angle showing you how I podcast, and basically you'll see the gear and everything in action and what I do during the show. And there is a poll in that video that I'm hoping people will let me know whether they like that kind of content, because it's all cheesy, of course. It's questions and answers, a bit like this show, but not live. Anyway, we've got some questions, so I'll stop waffling and we'll get on with it, shall we? Um, where are we? There is the first question is from Steady Trousers. What is the most difficult cheese to make? Hmm. Oh, I haven't made this cheese by the way. I would say mimolette is a very difficult cheese to make because it needs the involvement of cheese mites. These are little insects that burrow into the surface of the cheese and they create the flavour for the cheese. So if you don't have the presence of cheese mites in your cheese cave, you won't be making mimolette very anytime soon. So I would say mimolette is probably a difficult cheese, as is another cheese that I think is banned, casu marzu, which is a cheese made in Sicily, and that cheese basically has is put into a loft within a barn during summer temperatures, and flies blow in it. So you get maggots within the cheese. So that's another difficult cheese to make. In fact, it's banned, and rightly so. I probably would say. I think it's a an acquired taste. I certainly am never going to make it. But yeah, they would be difficult cheeses to make because they need insects to help them out. Okay, hope that answers your question. Next question is from uh, Helke. I think that's how you pronounce it. Hi, Gavin. Can you make the cheese Old Amsterdam? Now, Old Amsterdam is a blue cheese. I don't have a recipe. I think it's a proprietary recipe, so it'd be difficult to get my hands on it. But I'll write it down anyway. Check if it's not already on the list. Um, Bruce says, should the stove be on the entire time when stirring and heating the milk? Yeah, initially, Bruce, when you first make your cheese, the first part of the process is putting your milk into the pot and then heating it. So, yes, the stove does have to be on. When you get to just adding the starter cultures, then you basically turn the heat off because the milk tends to hold its heat. So turn the heat off and then just check the temperature again just before you are going to add the rennet after the ripening period, and see whether it's in 1 or 2 degrees. And if it is, that's fine. You wouldn't need to heat it again. And then only when the recipe says after you've cut the curds do you need to apply heat again, or keep it the same temperature because it'll start to drop after you've cut the curds a little bit. You don't want to cook the hell out of them because that'll release too much whey depending on the recipe you're going to do. Okay. Um, Geordie has said, I was going to make a Stilton until I saw your blue cheddar tasting. Did you have the heat on when you did the second curd stirring? Let me think. Yeah, I think I had to raise the temperature up to 38 Celsius. Can't remember the exact recipe right now. These things just don't stick in my mind. That's why I video them. Um, yeah, so yeah, I did to raise the temperature up. I did have the heat on for that one. Emily says, "How do you make cottage cheese?" Uh, well, you know what? I've tried once, and I haven't managed to make it. Certainly not the cottage cheese that you find in the supermarket. I've made a cheese that is fairly cubed, and it seems to look all right, but it ended up being cream cheese in the end because it was just too smooth. Um, so I have made it before. You actually heat your milk up to, I think it's about 30, 32 degrees Celsius, and then add a few drops of rennet, calcium chloride if it's been pasteurized, and then you leave it overnight for it to set. And then you have to cut the curd and you got to stir it gently, and then you strain it through a cheesecloth, and hopefully then you have cottage cheese. Now, one of the better cottage cheeses that I tend to make is paneer, which is an Indian cottage cheese. Very easy to make. There is a video link if Kim wants to see if she can find that one to paneer. And it's not cottage cheese as we know from the supermarket, but when it's salted, it is a delightful little cheese to eat. So it's like a pressed ricotta, really quick, fresh, nice and simple, and great in curry dishes. Montana says, hello again. Love the newest provolone video. It was wonderful to see how it turned out. And what's a good replacement for a cheese cave? Um, okay, is that literally or metaphorically? So, what I use for a cheese cave is not actually a cave itself, it's just a fridge. So, it's like a dorm fridge or a bar fridge. I'm not sure what people call it in other countries. We could tend to call them bar fridges because they sit underneath the bar area if you had a bar in your own home. Um, and basically, it's got an external thermostat, and that external thermostat is set at 13 degrees Celsius. So my cheese cave is between 11 and 12 degrees Celsius. So it tends to be okay for my cheeses, and they seem to ripen okay at that temperature. But you must make sure you have an external thermostat, or otherwise you don't get the temperature down, because the fridge will stay at 4 degrees Celsius, which is usually what it's set at, unless you've got that external thermostat. Okay. German in Tokyo says, hi, Gavin. I'm struggling to get the perfect humidity. I have a large wine fridge. The temperature is perfect. Humidity is an issue I face right now. Now, I've actually broached this topic on the latest podcast episode, but I'll do it here now anyway. Don't try and create the right environment in your cheese fridge for humidity. You'll be battling. You're fighting a losing battle, basically. If you create the right environment in a plastic ripening box, that is perfect for each individual cheese. If you're trying to make a mold ripened cheese, then the ripening box is much better, because not only can you keep the humidity at between 85 and 95, just from the moisture that seeps out of the cheese itself, you will also not cross-contaminate other cheeses within the cheese cave. So ripening boxes are the thing to use if you're making a natural rind cheese or a mold ripened cheese, or washed rind as well. So those three. Normally, I just vacuum pack them. Don't worry about the humidity. If they're cheeses of the cheddar type, or even hard Italian cheeses, I'll vacuum pack them after about 4 weeks, so they don't dry out. Because you've got to remember, the wheels of, say, Parmigiano Reggiano are like 30 kilograms. They're massive, right? The big wheels of cheese, they won't dry out. However, for us home cheesemakers that are only making between 1 kilo and 2 kilos of cheese, which is 2.2 pounds to 4.4 pounds of cheese, they're going to dry out over a year, right? So you've got to use either ripening boxes to keep the humidity in, or vacuum pack or wax the cheese. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Next question is from MS. MS says, I made fresh mozzarella using citric acid, but during storage it turned out to be slimy. What could have caused it to go slimy? Yes, the fresh mozzarella is exactly that. It should be eaten within a couple of days. It should not be stored, because it tends to go flat and slimy, as it does. What causes it to go slimy? Time, basically. So you actually need to make sure that you eat it very quickly. If you're going to store it, freeze it, basically, in a Ziploc bag, and take it out, defrost it. And while it's semi-frozen, you can also grate it. It's a lot easier to grate if you're making quick mozzarella. Fresh mozzarella is probably better in a brine solution, but fresh mozzarella, if you're going to make it the traditional method, you really eat that within a week as well. You don't really store it. Okay. Ashish says, hello, I'm Ashish from India. Watch your channel regularly. Thank you very much, mate. Emily says, I saw the cottage cheese, cream cheese video. I like to make cream cheese either way, but I really like cottage cheese. Look, I'll put it on my list. I think it fell off, but I'll see if I can make something. I do have some other recipes, but I'll pop that on the list. See how we go, Emily. Team Sapperline. G'day, mate. How are you again? Asher says, I just want to convey my thanks to you for sharing your knowledge to all of us. Happiness is happiness when shared. Thank you, and God bless. You're most welcome, Ashish. I just like sharing stuff. I think it's the right thing to do. No point in being secretive when it comes to cheese making. There are so many sources out there, but I like to make sure they're free. Kim, thank you from that for that link there. And Mohammed says, "Greetings from Egypt. Love your videos. Thank you very much, mate." Um, Helen says, "Can you use aluminium foil to wrap your camembert?" Not really, because it won't be able to breathe properly. You can use a micro perforated foil that on one side has a wax paper on one side of it, the other side is silver. You probably seen those in commercial cheeses. As long as they can breathe, that's the problem. If you use aluminium foil and wrap up your camembert without any holes in it, it will tend to have a buildup of ammonia and it'll really stink when you open up the wrapper. And ammonia tends to make the cheese go very runny just underneath the rind. So wax paper is a good solution. And wax paper wrapped in, so wrap your cheese in wax paper and wrap your cheese then in cling film during the maturation period at 4 degrees Celsius. Now, another YouTuber who's just started up, Job's Cheese Lab. So, Kim, if you can go find the link on YouTube to Job's Cheese Lab and put that up, I'd love to steer everybody over to have a look at Job's channel because he's been doing some amazing little experiments. He does cheese making experiments in his own home. So he doesn't tend to put recipes up or that sort of thing, but he does experiments that may have gone down in cheese making legends. Like, for instance, can you wrap mold ripened cheeses in cling wrap, for instance, and get them to bloom and that sort of thing? So, yeah, go over and once Kim finds the link to Job's Cheese Lab, a pretty cool channel and one of the recent cheese making channels that I've seen. So, very, very good. Well done to Job as well. Okay, next question. Stefan says, "Is it possible to make cream cheese in the milk bottle?" Yes, it is. You can make cream cheese in a milk bottle. All you do is, as long as it is, well, it doesn't really matter what kind of container it is, but you need to heat the milk up to the starting temperature of about 30 degrees Celsius. Put in your starter culture, put a couple of drops of rennet in, give it a good shake, and leave the bottle at that temperature or room temperature. So if it drops down to about 21, that's fine. And you'll find the next day you'll have a thick curd. And you can drain the curd out of the bottle, might be difficult, into a butter muslin and let it drain for 12 to 18 hours. And you've got yourself some cream cheese. Pretty simple to do. Okay, Steady Trousers says, "I want to make cheese. What is the best beginner cheese? P.S. Phoebe, say hi to Gavin." Say hi, Gavin. The best beginner's cheese, ricotta. Ricotta followed by maybe paneer. And then I would lash out and try halloumi. Halloumi's a great cheese. Very simple to make and amazing when it's fried in a frying pan with olive oil. It doesn't tend to melt. It's not supposed to. But yeah, halloumi, great starter cheese. You get all the methods that you would normally from a normal cheese. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Okay, next question from German in Tokyo. "I put a ripening box inside a wine fridge 2 days ago. My goal is Gouda cheese. However, the humidity issues inside isn't perfect either." Okay, so okay, we'll try waxing. Yeah, Gouda's better waxed, honestly. Gouda, Edam, Havarti, that's great waxed as well. Vacuum packing puts too much pressure on it. Those three washed curd cheeses are better waxed. That's just from experience. Okay, John. G'day, John. my question is, if I've waited 24 hours and my traditional mozzarella hasn't got to the right pH, what should I do? Thanks from Vicksburg, Michigan. 24 hours and your hasn't got the right pH. So the acid development has basically stopped, I think, is what you're saying. Um, mm, I don't know what I would do with it personally. It's going to be a curd. Look, what I'd do is heat it up and try and stretch it because your pH, either your pH meter or your pH paper may be wrong. So do the stretch test, see what happens. If you can stretch it, then stretch it into mozzarella, put it in the hot water or hot whey and go from there. That's the only thing I can think of. Otherwise, heat up the curd mass. It should be able to be molded anyway. Pop it into a cheese mold and just let it sit there and then chill it. And then just eat it as a fresh cheese. That'd be the best thing to do if you can't stretch it. Okay, Geordie said, I just got my fridge and external thermostat, all good so far. I used an Inkbird 308 thermostat regulator. I can recommend it. Humidity box is at 91%. Fantastic. Perfect. That'd be ideal for cheese making. And Stefan says, greetings from South Africa. Thanks, mate. Edward says, what hard cheeses can I make that don't need to be aged more than a month? Greetings from South Africa. 2 South Africans. Okay. Edward, the perfect cheese for you that doesn't need to be matured for more than a month is a Welsh cheese called Caerphilly. Caerphilly, or spelled C-A-E, how do I spell it? Caerphilly, C-A-E-A-R-P-H-I-L-L-Y. I think that's right. I might have mucked it up. But Caerphilly, beautiful cheese. And it matures within 3 weeks. It's heavily salted, mind you, but the rind is a lot saltier than what the paste, the creamy paste in the middle, is absolutely to die for. There is a little bit of a cheddaring process that goes on, but not too much. So it doesn't tend to be crumbly. It tends to be smooth in the paste. But highly recommend, one of my early go-to cheeses. If I'm going to do any experiments with cheese, I'll use the Caerphilly recipe because it matures so quickly. Great cheese. Kim Weber, how do you spell Job? Yeah, G-O-B-E. That's it, honey. Oh, you found the link. All good. Hawkey says, hi, Gavin. I use leftover whey to make whey ricotta. First turned out firm, whey from Gouda, and second, very soft, like cream cheese, whey from feta. How can I control the consistency? The consistency is controlled by the acidity of the whey. So because you're increasing the acidity, what you need to do, if you find, well, the firm one, the whey from Gouda, it probably would have been quite acidic because it has to sit there and ripen for such a long time. And you're working the cheese a lot more with Gouda, so the acidity has had time to develop. So when you add in, say, citric acid or vinegar, you may be adding too much and it goes really firm. Now, the whey from feta, the feta is worked a lot less. I think it's only stirred for 20 minutes tops. Unlike the Gouda where you're working it for about an hour. So the acidity is a lot lower with feta. So therefore, when you added more acid, obviously you got a softer ricotta. So that's what the consistency is. So add a little bit of acid at a time and check how large the grains of ricotta are as they're floating around in the whey. Take a bit, put it on your finger. If you can squeeze it between your finger and it looks like a paste, and it's a very smooth paste, and then taste a little bit of it, and that's how you can check as you're going along. So it's like cooking. You're always going to taste your food as you're cooking, right? Very similar with ricotta. I know the whey is going to be very hot, but I get a little bit of paste and I put it between my fingers and see if it's nice and smooth. If it's grainy, then you know you've gone too far and you're going to get a hard ricotta. So not much you can do there. Okay. So that helps, hopefully. Montana says, over here in England, we have apricot juice infused cheese. Is this preferable for softer cheeses? Yeah, it is, because we tend to find that cheeses that are aged longer, so like over 3 months, tend to have a reaction with fruit and that sort of stuff. So softer cheeses or fresher cheeses are better with fruit in them than are hard cheeses. Hawkeye says it was very visible in the very beginning. At the first attempt, the curds look like in your video, and the second time, the curds are very small, almost invisible. Yeah, that's the amount of acid you've added in. Okay. Japan is terribly hot at the moment. My lab is around 30 degrees C. It takes a lot of time to cool the room down. Do you think it will affect the quality of the cheese if I make it in a room with a high temperature? Yeah, it does tend to actually. Anything over about 25 degrees, the cheese tends to, if you're, say, air drying it, and this is the only time it really matters when your room temperature is high. If the temperature is high, you'll find that the cheese starts to sweat oil, and you want to avoid that because you want those oils left in the cheese as it matures. So I tend not to make cheese when the inside temperature is fairly high, over, say, 20 to 5 degrees Celsius. So it will affect the outcome of the cheese. Now, um, if I'm if it is hot and I've made cheese and it gets hotter, what I tend to do is just put the cheese on my cheese mat in the cheese fridge, and that, I know it cools it down to 13 degrees Celsius, but it helps it with drying, and it won't get too hot and it won't sweat oil. Okay, Carol says Cafelli is a wonderful cheese, very easy to make and delicious. Thanks, Carol. Lovely to see you here. Geordie uh, has said, "Oh, Tom, hello. Thank you very much. Thanks for the super chat. Um, which cheeses can you freeze? Does it affect them? Yeah, look, the softer cheeses tend not to be able to freeze. They tend to separate. The harder cheeses are okay if they're grated. I don't tend to freeze cheese that is whole. I tend to freeze like grated Parmesan or grated Romano or even grated cheddar. So it's the best way to freeze them. Tends to break them down if you freeze the whole cheese, and definitely so with the softer cheeses, even worse. And of course, Tom has said thanks for all you do. If you want to do a super chat like Tom did, then that way, there's a little dollar icon down there, and you can throw some bucks my way. Make me happy. I'm always a happy guy anyway. All righty. Hope that answered your question, Geordie. Stefan says, how do I make goat cheese less goaty? The chevin we mostly get in shops tastes more like cow than goat. That's because they tend to mix the goat's milk with cow's milk. That's how they make it less goaty. Yeah, if you use goat's milk and you make chev or sherv or however you want to say it, you'll find that there is, what's known as a goaty flavour. I particularly like it. I like the tartiness and the extra lipase that is in goat's milk. So, it's half a dozen to one. Anyway, lovely. Oh, that's a great one. Carol says, Buddha Kaiser is another favourite. Here in Florida, I have to plan cheese making around hurricane season. Power can be out for weeks after one. Yeah, definitely. So it's probably best for you, Carol, to make it in the winter time, even though the temperature probably wouldn't get down too much. It's probably the best time. But yeah, good recommendations. Geordie, thank you. Montana says, could I use full-fat Devondale milk to make ricotta? Yeah, of course you could. You get a better yield too. Kim, could you find the link for the whole milk ricotta or full cream milk ricotta? It's on the channel there somewhere. And yeah, it just pop up the link there for Montana. where I used full cream, unhomogenized milk. Okay. How can you counter question to Geordie? How do I make cheese more goaty? I tasted goat camembert in France and it was really sharp. Loved it. Never found something similar in stores to Germany. Okay, to make it more goaty, you would leave the goat's milk as it is. Goat's milk naturally has a lot of lipase or a sharper lipase in the milk that's already present. So you don't need to add it in like you would with, say, cow's milk if you're going to make a hard Italian cheese or the like. So it will become, it'll have that goaty taste to it if you just use plain goat's milk and don't add anything to it. It'll be fine. Okay. Hope that answers your question. Next one is Sale Nugget says, do you prefer Havarti with dill or caraway? I actually prefer Havarti with caraway seeds. In fact, I like a mixture of caraway and cumin seeds. So absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Kim, for popping up that link for Montana. But yeah, caraway and cumin seeds together. Don't crack them or anything like that. Just boil them up at the start for 15 minutes in a cup of water. And then you mill them through the curds, the Havarti curds, when you've salted them. So, and it is absolutely delicious. Fantastic cheese. Phyllis, how are you? And Montana, thank you. No problems. Quick cheesy joke, of course. Hopefully there's no cannibals watching the live stream. I don't want to offend anybody. What is a cannibal's favourite cheese? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? It is Limburger. And there's the picture. Oh, there we are. So cannibal's favourite cheese is Limburger. Hilarious. Okay, enough corny jokes. I'm sure you've got some more questions for me now. I was just looking at myself in the replay. I've got it going over there. That's probably bad. Right, okay. AJ, how are you, mate? Nice to hear from you. It took me over 2 months to find a farm who sells and ships fresh cow's milk. Very nice small farm. Is there anything I need to keep in mind regarding milk? My project partner is worried if Japanese farms are okay. Look, it's up to you. You have to determine whether the milk is safe, especially if it's raw milk. I would tend to thermize the milk or use another name for it is low temperature long hold pasteurization. So the milk is heated to 63 degrees Celsius and held for 30 minutes at that temperature, and then it's rapidly cooled down to either the temperature you want to start making your cheese at or down to 4 degrees Celsius for storage. So thermize your milk. Now, a lot of the good lactic bacteria survive that process, and all the bad ones die. So it's called thermizing or low temperature long hold pasteurization. Recommend it if you don't trust the source of the milk. Okay. Where are we? They are small. Yes. Did I make any Turkish cheese? No, I have not made any Turkish cheese, unfortunately. Do you have a specific name of the cheese? And I'll see what I can find. There's not any more questions, unfortunately. What time is it? It is half an hour to go. Unless anybody's got any more questions, we can probably call the show. We'll call it a wrap for today. But yeah, if you do have some questions, then bring them in. All right, here we go. There's another one. Regarding pasteurization, I read one should pasteurize raw milk at 70 degrees for 30 seconds. How do I get the milk that hot so fast? Well, normally they use a machine to do that. But like I said, use thermizing. Don't worry about commercial pasteurization. because you're at home, it's called batch pasteurization, right? Because you're using a lot of milk that's stagnant. It doesn't pass through any machinery at a high temperature and then lowers down. So batch pasteurization. Um, so like I said, 63 degrees. There's actually a video. Kim, can you pull up the video for pasteurization? I think I called it low temperature long hold, something like that. How to pasteurize your milk. And pop the link up. That would be fabulous. Carol, thank you very much for your $2 super chat. Love my recipes and my jokes. Thank you very much. Montana, when you make whole milk ricotta, can you use the whey to make more? No. Most of the protein from the cheese is gone. You'll find that the whey from making whole milk ricotta is almost clear. It's almost see-through. It's like a clear liquid, right? Like water, but yellow. So you will not be able to make any more ricotta. However, if that ricotta is if that whey is cloudy, then yes, you can add a little bit more acid, but it's going to be very gritty, and the second batch will come out quite firm, which is probably not what you're after. You're after a sweet ricotta. Okay. Geordie says, if I'm making cheese with 10 litres of cow's milk but have no lipase, how much goat's milk can I add to replace the cow's milk? Okay. To get an equivalent, you need to take away 2 litres of cow's milk and add in 2 litres of goat's milk. And that'll give you enough lipase to make the cheese. I think you're probably either making a hard Italian cheese, probably, if you don't have any lipase. And that'll work out fine. You'll get the right flavour profile you're looking for. Mete says, cars are gravier. Let me just write that down. I don't have a recipe for it, but I'll see if I can track it down. Always on the hunt for a new cheese. So that means cheese. So that may be like Gruyere cheese. Oh, maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out. All right, Stefan says, what did the cheese say to itself in the mirror? I don't know that one. Quick, give me the punchline, Stefan. Kim, how to pasteurize milk. Thank you very much for that link, darling. I appreciate it. Carol, use the whey to water your tomatoes and peppers. They love it. Also, whey is fantastic to. Actually got a blog post somewhere that says 10 things to do with whey at littlegreencheese.com. But another thing that likes acidic whey, acidic loving plants like citrus trees, they love whey. They really do. Gives them a bit of a boost. Other plants, blueberries, they love acidic, and so do hibiscus. Not that I've got any hibiscus, but yeah, there are other plants. Other things you can use whey for is in cooking in sourdough bread in place of water. Also within pancakes, but buttermilk's probably better for pancakes. Marinating meat in whey is another great thing you can do with whey. Okay, so there's some suggestions, and thanks, Carol, for kicking that off. I appreciate it. Lindsay, why is there such a massive difference between Danish S-Rom cheese and Italian Telaggio? The ingredients are very similar, both washed rind, but totally different. Yes, Kim, that was the right video. Thank you, mate. Lindsay, good question. Both cheeses are washed rind cheeses. It's usually the ripening time and the ripening temperature, and how often they wash the rind will create the flavour within the cheese. Just because the ingredients are the same doesn't mean the process is the same. A lot of the cheeses I make start off with the same ingredients: 10 litres of milk, half a teaspoon of rennet, half a teaspoon of calcium chloride, and quarter of a teaspoon or an eighth a teaspoon of starter culture. Those are the standard thing, but it's the process as you go through. How acidic do you make the milk before you add the starter cultures? How acidic is the milk before the rennet's added? How long do you stir the curds? What temperature do you age them at? Whether you wash the rind in just a standard brine solution, or do you add a little bit of brevibacterial linens in? So many variables within cheese making. is why there are thousands of types of cheese on Earth using just about the same ingredients. So, yeah, that's what I can say. So, what are the the punchline that Stefan, what did the cheese solo say to itself in the mirror? Hello me, or halloumi. If you say it properly, you don't get the joke. But good joke. That joke was better than Gavin's. Kim, don't humour him. Come on. Carol, my chicken and pups love whey as well. Yes, the chickens do like a little bit of whey. It tends to give them the runs, though. Not that it matters if chickens get the runs. They just do it anywhere they like anyway. Mine do anyway. Okay. Montana says, is it easier to source the rennet for cheese? Yep. Depends on where you live, I suppose. We have rennet in our store, littlegreenworkshops.com.au. I think we've got 2 tablet types and 2 liquid types of rennet. So 4 types of rennet. And all are vegetarian rennets. There's no animal rennets because they tend to not last as long in storage. So, yeah, most good cheese-making supply stores will have rennet. If they don't, they're not really a cheese-making supply store. Don't try and use junket because junket is such a weak type of rennet that you will not be able to set a curd properly to make cheese. And the cheese curds will just fracture and you'll be stirring around slop, basically. It won't be curds and whey. Okay. Hauke says, how much does freezing raw milk hurt it? I have a farm here that sells raw cow's milk from a tap at very affordable prices, but I'm not sure if I can use it in the same day. Look, just from experience, Hauke, yes, all the raw milk that I've ever used, I've got it in a frozen state. So I remember getting a friend who was coming from Tasmania, and she had a friend across the road who had a cow, and the cow's name was Sophie, even though the cow's name, how cool's that? And she gave me some frozen raw cow's milk, which I quickly turned into, so I thawed it out, brought it up to the target temperature. It was frozen for about 3 days. That was fine. And I made a raw milk Romano out of it. Get out of here. What's that bloody bug? Raw milk Romano. And it tasted absolutely fantastic. I aged it for 10 months at 10 degrees Celsius in accordance with Food Standards Australia, and it tasted absolutely fantastic. And recently, I think late last year, I was given some frozen sheep's milk, ewe's milk, and that was frozen for about a week, and that turned out fantastic. I made 3 cheeses out of that. So I made Pecorino Romano, so proper sheep's milk Romano. I made a ricotta, and then I made ricotta salata from that. Beautiful, absolutely fantastic. And that was frozen like for a week. So, yes, you can freeze milk. I haven't seen any degradation. It still sets a curd, and it seems to be okay. All right, Emily, any upcoming taste test you are looking forward to? Funny you should say. I've got currently now, I've got a double Gloucester that's a year old, and that'll be around about the 9th of July. I've got a Cheshire that's ready 15th of July. I'm looking forward to that. I've got a Parmesan that's ready in September. The marbled cheddar is ready in late August. The Pecorino Romano, I'm looking forward to. That'll be ready on the 18th of October. The Drunken Cheese will be ready 31st of August. The Triple Jack, I'm really looking forward to. I might have to have some yogurt or some milk handy due to the strength of the chilies that I've got in it. That'll be ready in September. The Keflatiri will be ready in August. And the Farmhouse Cheddar Blue, we're currently eating. The taste test for that will be up on Friday. So that was an amazing cheese. Well, it's not was. There's still half of it left. We're having a little piece for supper every night, which is absolutely delightful. I love being a cheesemaker and being able to make these amazing cheeses. So, a very successful blue cheese. So, check out this Friday, Farmhouse Cheddar Blue. The recipe's already up on the channel. You'll be able to see that and replicate it, and it is amazing. Okay, thanks Emily for that question. I'd see, and I had it all written down, like I it was staged. Anyway, what is the key in making stinky cheese stinky? Brevibacteria linens. It's a bacteria that is also found in between your toes. So there's an old story that goes like this. Back in the day, Trappist monks back in France, or wherever they were hiding, were making cheese. And one of the monks accidentally dropped his stinky sock into, or stinky sandal, we're not quite sure which, into the vat of cheese. And then when the cheeses were maturing, this red mold started growing all over the outside. And they didn't know what it was, but they let it go and kept washing it off and trying to anyway. And it turned into what's known as Trappist cheese or Ochre or St. Paulin. There's some of the names for it. And then from there, it kind of spread. The bacteria is native all sorts of places, not just between your toes. I kind of made that story up, but that's how I thought it might have happened anyway. So that's what makes stinky cheeses stinky. You'll often see they have a red rind. And yeah, now, but in the form of, say, Parmesan, that's just the age of the cheese. And it's usually the lipase within the milk because they're made from raw milk. Most Parmesan, Parmigiano Reggiano, made from raw milk. And it's been skimmed, and there's a lot of lipase in it, so that's what makes that smell. Okay. Montana says, what cheeses have less stirring times? Alrighty, some cheeses that have less stirring times, off the top of my head, is feta. You only have to stir that for 20 minutes. Camembert, which I think you stir for 10 minutes, tops, if you stir it at all. Double brie, same thing. I don't think you even stir that either. Cream cheeses, you don't stir them at all. You don't even cut the curd. You just ladle it into a bag. There's some good ones anyway, so try those out. Don't need longer stirring times. And Brandon says, just stop by to say I love your videos. And of course, I love cheese. So do I, mate. I really love cheese. Carol says, I wish I could be there for the taste tests. You and everybody else, Carol, I tell you, they love the taste test. Emily says, when you say you serve for 40 minutes, is that constant stirring non-stop? Well, it depends on the cheese. Most of the recipes say that you need to constantly stir it. Sometimes I get away, depends on what I'm doing at the time, you get away with stirring for 5 minutes. You can probably leave it for 2 or 3, but if the curds start to settle on the bottom of the pot and start to mat together, then you're in trouble. So the curds and whey have to be moving most of the time. So when you make a cheese like Parmesan, where you have to stir for an hour, you really do have to have a bit of elbow grease in stirring. I swap hands. That's what I do. And when you saw me making that marbled cheddar, I had to stir with two hands at once. So I had one that was coloured with a natto and one that wasn't coloured. So I was doing double stirring at the same time. My goodness, my arms were aching after that. But yeah, you get used to it, and a glass of wine helps, by the way. It helps lubricate the elbows. Hawkey says, my feta is getting a little runny, slimy on the outside. How do I troubleshoot, tweak my brine so that I can store it for longer? Good question. If your feta is getting slimy due to the being in brine, there's one thing that's wrong. The pH is not balanced between the cheese and the brine. What you need to do is you need to increase the acidity of the whey and add a little bit of calcium chloride. So when I make fully saturated brine, especially for things like feta that you're storing it in, you check the pH, and you should have the pH down to about 4.9. or 4.7, around there, it's ideal because that's what the cheese comes to eventually. So when I make 2 litres of brine, I add in, I think it's a tablespoon of white vinegar and a teaspoon of calcium chloride. And that prevents the ion exchange of calcium atoms from the cheese into the brine, which happens when one is less acidic than the other, and that creates a slimy rind on the cheese. So you can fix that by adding a bit of vinegar and calcium chloride. Kim says it's divine too, the farmhouse cheddar blue. Yes, it is. Abdulaziz, g'day, how are you, mate? Carol, between your toes, yes, indeed. Well, you know, that's for people with smelly feet. That's where the smell comes from. Smells the same as washed rind cheeses. Okay, Abdulaziz says, can I make cheese only using milk and vinegar? Yes, you can. It's called ricotta, and it's a very nice cheese too. Montana, thank you so much. No probs. Hi-Fi, do you use a cheese knife to break up the curd? I recently saw somebody breaking it up with what looked like a round whisk, and it went a lot faster. Yeah, you can. Some of the cheeses, depends on the curd size. So you notice in the recipes that I put up, you can, it depends on what the size of the curd. So if the curd size is a centimetre or 1.25 or half an inch, then I'll usually use my curd harp, which is measured at that. Now, if it says 6 millimetres, which is a lot smaller, or quarter of an inch, then you've got to use your whisk. So I use the balloon whisk and dunk it into the curd and then stir it through with the balloon whisk very slowly, of course, and that cuts the curd into finer particles. And eventually, when you've finished making that cheese, usually they're hard cheeses like Swiss cheeses and hard Italian cheeses. They will have grains of curd that are about the size of a plump rice grain. That's what you're trying to get to at the end before you drain it and press it. So using a whisk definitely is the best way to cut it with those. It's not. It is faster, kind of, but you've got to make sure that it's cut evenly. Anyway, last few questions because we've got 8 minutes to go. Geordie says, can I use saffron instead of annatto? Yes, you can. You can also use safflowers to give you a colour that's very similar to annatto. I don't know how much, but I've read in a cheese history book recently that they did use saffron and they did use safflowers to colour the cheese instead of annatto when they were creating a lot of cheeses, cheddar-style cheeses in England. Okay. Last few questions. Hawkey, I used your brine recipe and diluted it by half, added calcium chloride and vinegar. What is the concentration of your calcium chloride? I think it's 30%. You may need to add a little bit more vinegar or test it with pH strips. Emily, ever looked into getting something mechanical? Yeah, there's been a few things I've looked at that may be okay to stir your cheese with it, but the problem is if you don't stir it top to bottom, and this is the hard part, right? If you don't stir it top to bottom, the curds always sink to the bottom and start to mat. So I've seen a lot of blokes in their workshops trying to make curd stirrers and usually end up failing because they don't take that into consideration. I think a lot of the big vat stirring things push the whey in the curds in a circular motion throughout the cheese. Anyway, Matthew said, oh, sorry, where are we? We've got heaps of questions already. What's going on? S. Sprout says, love the show. Can't stay home at work. Just want to stop and say hello. G'day. Suyfeen, hi, how are you? Abdul Aziz, what is the best cheese for a burger? Your favourite cheese is the best for a burger. I've even used halloumi as in a burger as well. It's delicious. But cheddars, anything that melts, fantastic. Matthew says, how long can I keep mozzarella and how can I preserve it? Best way is to freeze it if you want to keep your mozzarella for a long time because it is a fresh cheese, basically. Any longer, it's then known as scamorza. Okay, Emily, ice cream machines have a lid with stirring things attached that rotate slowly. Yeah, they do. You could probably use something like that, but it wouldn't be a very big batch of cheese because those ice cream machines tend to be a bit smaller. Halky says, I recently saw one using buttermilk as a thermophilic culture. Does this work? No, buttermilk is a mesophilic culture, not a thermophilic. Thermophilic starter culture can be things like yogurt and tangy yogurt. You would have seen that in my Not So Provolone video that I put up this Monday, 2 days ago. Sufine says, I see later a giveaway videos from many channel YouTube. Do you gonna start one? I've already had a giveaway for the 100,000 mark. You missed it. Sieb says, hey, I just wanted to say your videos is the best. Thanks, mate. And Joseph, I tried the recipe for mozzarella, but it didn't stretch. I used pasteurized milk with no calcium chloride added. Any idea why? Love your channel. Can't tell. Unfortunately, I wasn't there and I don't know how you did it. Not using calcium chloride is a good thing when you're making traditional mozzarella, but you just have to wait longer. Unfortunately, it's got to get down to pH of about between 5.3 and 5. So it's got to be fairly high acidity as far as milk goes. Okay, we'll call it a show. I think we've been going, 56 minutes. That'll do. Kim will do the wind up in a second. However, a couple of things just wanted to say. If you're in the market for some kits or supplies, pop over to littlegreenworkshops.com.au. If you want to become a patron of the show, don't forget to pop over to the patron link that is at the little I at the top of the video. There's a link there and in the description below. Also, we have a merch store where you can find amazing mugs like this one, certified curd nerd. It'll look great on your desk in the office. Absolutely fabulous. In fact, it is that makes the best coffee in those mugs because they're bigger. Lovely. Also, the ebook Keep Calm and Make Cheese, the beginner's guide to cheese making at home. You can find that in ebook format in all good ebook stores like Amazon or Apple iBooks. You can also find that over at littlegreencheese.com and littlegreenworkshops.com.au. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. It is always a great show when there's lots of people watching and asking lots of questions. Without you, there wouldn't be a show. So I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for turning up today and asking me lots and lots of questions. Hopefully I answered them to your satisfaction, and we'll have another show again next Wednesday. Thanks for watching, Curd Nerds, and I'll see you next time. Well, g'day, Curd Nerds. G'day, Curd Nerds. Well, g'day, Curd Nerds. Well, g'day, Curd Nerds. Well, g'day, Curd Nerds. Well, g'day, Curd Nerds.